All right, welcome everyone. It's just now 1 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. You're joining us today for a training for staff who are working in our summer programming, insight-based instruction. My name is Janelle Campbell. I'm the Director of Special Education, and I'm joined today for this training by my colleagues on the Rethinking Schools Task Force, Melina Boyd, Michelle Drake, and Patrick McLaughlin. So we have put together a lot of information in our agenda today. We've set aside an hour for today, and we'll have time for questions at the end. You can also enter questions into the chat if you'd like to do that throughout. And we'll make sure at the end that we do have some time for questions. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and start by sharing a little bit about the context and implementation.
Janelle, hi. Could I ask that if you could all mute, that would be terrific.
Thanks for that reminder, Michelle. So go ahead and put yourself on mute. Along the way, if you have a question, you can put it into the chat. And then when we get to the end, we'll have time for more open discussion and questions if that comes up. Thank you for the reminder. And then we'll go ahead and get started. I want to start by sharing a little bit about the work that's happened this spring, as well as the process and parameters that we have been following. So returning to site-based instruction is being implemented in phases, and each phase is consistent with public health and CDC protocols and recommendations. What we recognize is that COVID-19 is with us for the foreseeable future, and we must begin reopening certain aspects of our society within the confines of this new reality. And there are proven strategies to accomplish this in a way that lowers the probability of exposure and allows for contact tracing if someone does become symptomatic. So our process of rethinking schools and returning to site-based instruction has been sequential, cautious, and deliberate. When we look at our process, what that's included is identifying our stakeholders and establishing a task force, researching best practices and protocols in line with our agency partners, so as you guys are likely aware, we have planned and implemented pop-up childcare centers, and that's been in place since the start of the shelter in place. We've had 6 different sites, 14 cohorts in our pop-up childcare centers. Along the way, we've created documents and designed trainings and presented to focus groups. We've gotten feedback from our focus groups that have helped to guide the work that we're doing. We've shared the documents and FAQs out with staff, with districts, with agencies, as well as our families. So far in our process, we've already transitioned back our central MCOE office and have had pilot school programs in session over the last few weeks as well. So we've been beginning our planning for summer programming, along the way securing the essential protective equipment and supplies that will be needed in our summer programming. Most importantly, what I would want to say is everything that we've done is really in lockstep with our public health in making sure that everything that we're doing is with their guidance, and not just their guidance, but really very carefully considering everything that they've put out and checking back in throughout the way with our planning. So we are moving from phase one being the central office and our spring pilots. We're moving into our phase 2 of our process, and that is our summer programming, which is what brings us here today. For summer this year, we are anticipating to have 22 special education cohorts operating in person, 2 cohorts in our alternative education program, 1 ROP program, and 1 AVID program. All of those happening in person with our staff and students. And they start as early as next week for some of our programs, and will be operating anywhere from 3 weeks to 6 weeks, ending at the end of July. And along the way, as you can see on this slide, we are already planning for phase 3, which is our fall 2021 school year. So I am going to go ahead and pass it to my colleague, Melina.
Hello, everyone. My name's Melina Boyd. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I have a problem, though. I'm talking from a landline right now. I was on my cell phone, dialed the number, did everything that was told. I've got the meeting ID number and stuff, but it just cuts off part of the meeting ID. It says, you dialed 814-0746. That number does not exist. Well, that's not the number I dialed.
Well, it sounds like you're connected. We can hear you, and it sounds like you can hear us. And we are recording this training, so if you wanted to go back in it later, you'd be able to watch it at a later time as well.
Okay, so I'm on voice only with the landline.
Okay, you'll be able to see the slides and follow up.
Okay, okay. My name is Robert Miller.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to go over really quick getting ready and the walkthrough. So we basically want to just make sure that your spaces are all prepared in the new age of COVID-19. A lot of you guys have already done walkthroughs, so you kind of have seen the process, but it's really good to start thinking about this if you haven't had a walkthrough yet, as far as things that you can kind of change around in your classroom. So the first thing that we talk about in the walkthrough is curbside drop-off. Ideally, we absolutely do not want the parents or anybody that is outside of the cohort coming into the classroom. So we do curbside drop-off, and then we have a plan for pickup as well.
So this is only the student. In other words, the driver or anybody else shouldn't be there.
Only the student will end up going into the classroom.
Absolutely, okay.
So I can show you some ideal places to do it. Ideally, the student and the family never gets out of the car, so they could just pull up and you could use the thermometer to take their temperature, but we know that this isn't always ideal. We will kind of help you see where the best location would be in order to set up your table and your health check-in, which I will talk about in the next slide. Another thing that you might want to think about as well with curbside drop-off is if you have a table, you want to put down some tape to show that 6 feet of social distancing so families aren't getting too close to each other. The next thing that we're going to do is look at the classroom. Definitely there's probably a lot of stuff in the classroom right now, but we would ideally like to have all of the counters cleared off. Anything that isn't necessary in your hour-to-hour instruction is put away. You can see at the bottom here, we have a little picture with bins so that each student has a bin with their own toys. So students aren't going to be able to play with toys together, but if they have their own individual toys that they put back in their own individual bins, that is okay as well. We also want to think about social distancing the desks and having them 6 feet apart. And the next thing that you're going to want to think about is the essential protective equipment, which is all stuff that we are going to supply for you. Patrick is going to talk a lot more about cleaning and disinfecting shortly, as well as what is in your kit, which is basically going to be all of, whether it's wipes, it's spray, it's extra masks, gloves, whatever you might need to be safe in the classroom environment, we're going to help supply that to you. And like I said, we'll talk about that a lot more in a little bit here. It's also good to think about the student transportation options. The program managers and Janelle, they're going to be the ones that are setting all of this up, but it's also good to know which students are coming with their parents and which students are going to be dropped off on the bus. As far as outreach to the parents are concerned, again, the program managers and Janelle, they're going to be reaching out individually to each family to make sure that any kind of fears or hesitations and questions that they might have can be answered in real time. Next, we will talk about the health check-in. So as you may or may not know, all students and staff actually have to answer some questions regarding, within the last 24 hours if they've had any kind of COVID-19 symptoms. The students will get their temperatures taken. We do have touchless thermometers for everybody, so you'll have that at the check-in table. And you will also have a Google survey, and you can use either an iPad, a laptop, or a phone to actually answer these questions, to actually put the answers down into the Google form. We don't do a sign-in form anymore with a pen because we don't want each family touching the pen and then passing it along. So we do ask that the teachers actually do all of the check-in questions. And you can see here, there's 4 questions. It goes really quickly. It's important to note that if there is a yes response to any of these questions, the student is to be sent home. And you should contact Janelle immediately just to let them know that there was a yes response. So that could be that maybe the student or somebody in their family had vomiting within the last 24 hours or something like that. We use all of this, this information to give it to public health as well. It's also important to note that we keep extensive lists with contact information, as well as all of the attendance for all of the students ready for public health should there be some sort of situation where there is a possible exposure or a student or staff member has a positive test. So we have all of this stuff ready, all of this information ready to go so that we can consult public health on all of our next steps. Next, I will pass it along to Michelle.
Hi there, my name is Michelle Drake, and I'm also with the MCOE on this awesome team. And I just want to say that we actually, this morning, we got to listen to Tony Thurmond, who's our state superintendent, and in reference to providing us with a guidebook for reopening safe schools. And everything that they presented is exactly what we are doing. So it's like, it was just validating to hear it from a state level. So right here is a guide for administrators, teachers, and staff. It's a work in progress. And our goal is to return our students and our staff back to site-based classroom instruction to maximize our learning for success while being safe, and all of it under public health guidance. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the stable cohorts, physical distancing, ways to maximize space and minimize movement, briefly on EPE and cleaning. So a stable cohort is essentially 12 students with the same staff working together where the students don't change from one court to another. And they're all grouped in a separate room, and they're not mixing with other cohorts. And then the teachers and the staff remain solely with that one group. This is an example of a classroom where regarding physical distancing. And while the cohort is the physical distancing in many ways, to minimize the risk, we're suggesting that seats and desks are at least 6 feet apart. We are looking into ordering partitions that might be able to go in between the desks, possibly marking the floors with tape to kind of show where 6 feet is so the students can kind of get an idea physically of what it looks like. And then arranging desks in a way that minimizes the face-to-face contact. Teaching our students what is the elbow bump and different ways of greetings, because we want our kids to socially connect, but of course stay that 6 feet apart. So teaching them what the elbow bump is, and a thumbs up, and a hello, other ways to greet each other while staying social. So these were examples of how we can maximize our space and minimize movement. So we're all doing this. So this is just kind of a reiteration of what we are doing. but scheduling recess in separate areas that are designated by class so that the cohorts don't mix. Consider using learning outdoors instead of inside the classroom. And, using facilities, like for example, having one cohort go through one entrance, having one cohort use one bathroom, wherever it's actually practicable, wherever it's actually feasible to do this. We've talked about staggering lunches and recess, or staggering the pickup and drop-off times with our parents, just to sort of mitigate that, connecting together in one place with a large group. And you'll see here, this particular classroom, they utilized arrows, kind of like in the grocery store right now. If you go into like a Costco or a Safeway, they have arrows for the different aisles. So it's sort of similar to that with our students. And then our students can actually see it and then, be able to identify with it. Rearranging our furniture and play spaces to maintain separation. Drawing tape and circles, or drawing or taping circles and squares on the floor to note where that is, where the 6 feet is. And then just maximizing our space and ways to minimize movement in both indoor and outdoor spaces, so that it's sort of easy for our students to identify and understand. And then redesigning our activities for smaller groups. One teacher I heard this morning, she received beach towels and as a donation. And what she did with the beach towels was the students had their one beach towel, and she was able to, when they went out to have lunch, they sat outside on the beach towel, and then when they came back, and they also did their learning using the beach towel. And then those are easily cleanable. So I thought that was a really good idea. And then empowering the kids. So why do we physical distance? What does it mean to physical distance? Getting out measuring tape and having sort of their buy-in and using the curriculum of COVID and washing hands. Why is it important to wash our hands? Are we washing our hands correctly and properly? And really gaining the buy-in from the students so that they feel empowered to stay 6 feet apart, to continuously wash their hands where it becomes a routine. And then EPE, so essential protective equipment. So in the medical, this is what Dr. Willis has been telling us, is in the medical field, it's PPE, personal protective equipment. And for the education sector, we're calling it essential protective equipment. And we have it stocked here, it's inventory, and it's available to replenish as needed. And of course, we're going to be implementing training on that. And Patrick will go into that momentarily. Again, washing hands is upon arrival, and it's part of the day. It's, every hour, it's however you want to decide, but it's part of the daily structure of the classroom. And then snack and lunches, ideally bringing the students outside to have snack and lunch, or in the classroom at their desks, doing some cleaning in between, versus using the cafeteria in a larger setting. Best to use places where it's a little more intimate for your cohort. And then other logistics, so transportation. So we'll be in touch on this, but parents who travel and bring their students to class will be able to receive mileage on that and reimbursement for mileage. So we'll be in touch more on that. At this moment in time, parents and volunteers are not permitted in the classroom, as Melina also said. And then our students should leave toys and any other items that they don't need to bring in, at home. We're working on signage for each of the different sites regarding COVID and the risk assessment and preventative measures. Cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting frequently and in between groups, and keeping play materials on site where they're not sent home and brought back. And then keeping that emergency contact information up to date is important also. and now best practices. So, which is sort of what we've been going through this whole time. But you know, limit. It's so, for me, it's like that's what we do is we teach our kids to share, and now we're asking them to limit sharing. But that is, so maybe it's a why. What is different about the sharing? Why are we now saying to limit sharing and having that conversation with our students? Keeping each child's belongings separated and in individually labeled storage containers. You've seen this picture. Here it is again. And ensuring that belongings are taken home each day to be cleaned. And then of course, high-touch materials such as art supplies, pencils, crayons, to the extent as possible that they're in one place, and to limit the use of supplies to one group of children at a time. And then of course, we want to avoid sharing electronics, clothing, toys, books, and other games as much as possible. And then our response. So if you have program questions, please reach out to Christy or your program manager. If you have health and cleaning, anything surrounding COVID, we set up an email here at Marin County Office of Education, rapid response at marinschools.org. Please send us an email, any questions. We want to support you. We also have FAQs available on our website where it's a lot of frequently asked questions. And then if there's a yes response to the health check that Melina just reviewed with you, or you have an immediate something that you need to share, whether it's immediate symptoms of a child that they're showing, please text Janelle. We will be contacting public health from there. And then in the event that any of the following scenarios occur, like there's a yes to the questionnaire, or a student or staff member lives with someone who's been identified as having COVID-19, or a staff member of a cohort test positive, we will be then communicating. We'll be in communication with staff and families on that. Okay, I will now pass it on to Patrick, who will talk about EPE.
Hello, everyone. My name is Patrick McLaughlin, and I too am part of the Return to Site-Based Instruction or Rethinking Schools Task Force. So I wanted to start off kind of big picture here, talking about cleaning and disinfecting. And I know myself included, we sometimes use these words interchangeably, and I think it's important for us to understand the difference when we start to talk about how to best clean and sanitize and keep our classrooms safe. So cleaning is basically physically removing germs, dirt, and impurities from a surface and an object. And that can be done by those objects being brushed off. If you were to take a hand brush or a hand broom and just wipe off dirt from a table, that would be cleaning the table. It can also be using soaps and detergents to remove germs, dirt, oil, grease, things like that. So soaps and detergents help us, basically, they help us remove oils from a surface or an object. And then when we rinse off the soap and detergent, it then removes those oils and impurities. So cleaning is the act of removing things from a surface or object. Disinfecting is different. Disinfecting is the act of using a chemical to kill germs, bacteria on a surface or object. Disinfecting doesn't necessarily clean a surface. It just kills the bacteria and germs that are on a surface. And one thing that's also very important is the most effective way to disinfect is to first clean and then disinfect. If you're removing all of the dirt and impurities that germs and bacteria can it can serve as a habitat for those things, you remove all those by cleaning and then you disinfect. Disinfecting is much more effective. And then we have sanitizing. And basically what sanitizing is sanitizing is a form of disinfection, but sanitizers are at a lower concentration of the chemical. And so the sanitizer decreases the number of germs on an object to a safe level. And what is kind of an industry standard is 99% of all of the germs on a surface, if you're using a sanitizer, will be killed. Disinfecting, they say, will kill 99.99999% of all of the germs on a surface. So sanitizing is a very, very, very effective, especially with good cleaning, a very effective way to decrease the number of germs on an object, which ultimately lowers the risk of infection. And then the last vocabulary word is dwell time. And so what dwell time is the amount of time a disinfectant or a sanitizer needs to remain wet on the surface in order to work properly. And so dwell times for different types of sanitizers and disinfectants depend on what disinfecting you're using and what type of germs you are trying to kill. So dwell times can range from anywhere from 30 seconds to 10 minutes, depending on the disinfectant sanitizer you're using and what you're trying to, what type of germ, if it's a virus, if it's a bacteria you're trying to kill. So next slide. And go ahead. Was there a question? No, okay. I'm going to continue forward here. And so I want to also talk about essential protective equipment, and Michelle touched on this a little bit. So, and the difference between essential protective equipment and PPE, which is personal protective equipment. So personal protective equipment is equipment that we put on to help protect ourselves from the disinfectants and sanitizers. And so when we are using sanitizers and disinfectants, depending on which form we are using it in, we may be asked to use gloves, we may be asked to have a mask on, we may be asked to wear eye protection. And so when we are reading the labels of all of the things that we're using, it's very, very important to make sure that we have the correct protective equipment on when we're using these chemicals. And we have created a website on the MCOE website, and under that website there is specific information about essential protective equipment and how to properly put on that equipment, take off that equipment. And so there's a video here that is shown. We're not going to watch it right now, but it's a 5-minute video that really talks about what is cleaning, what is disinfecting, what is sanitizing, and what is the proper equipment to be wearing, and how to wear it, and how to dispose of it afterwards, after you're finished using that chemical for disinfecting and sanitizing. Next slide. Okay, so also on our website, we have created cleaning schedules we've created cleaning schedules for classrooms that have a higher need for cleaning, usually our pre-K special ed classes and younger elementary school age students, and then our older students as well. But what is happening is the same. So if you look here on the cleaning schedule, we have clean and sanitize after desktop use. And so what that means is that if after a student has used the desktop for the day, we're going to want to clean and sanitize it before someone else uses it. And then if you go down to, for example, bathrooms, we're going to want to sanitize bathrooms of all the touch areas after use. And then we would want disinfecting happening by the maintenance and operations staff periodically throughout the day. So this really spells out when we're cleaning, when we're sanitizing, and when we're disinfecting different objects in the classroom throughout the day. Also on the website, we have step-by-step cleaning posters for cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting as well, that serve as a really good resource when just kind of going through that process. Again, it is really, really important that we clean before we sanitize whenever there's impurities on a surface. It's much more effective to be sanitizing or disinfecting a clean surface than sanitizing or disinfecting a dirty surface. Lastly, we have created a specific supplies request form. This is very similar to a lot of the special ed forms that we've had in the past. We've just kind of streamlined it a little bit and updated it. So we'll be sending out these classroom supply request forms to all of the special ed classes. For the other ROP classes and Marin Community Schools, we have specific kits that we've created for what we think is the correct amount of EPE that is necessary per room. This is the pre-K through 5th special ed EPE kit. And so each kit, we want to make sure that in every classroom there are gloves, in every classroom there are face coverings that are available for the staff and students if they don't have it with them, that there are safety glasses and face shields, hand sanitizer, disinfectant sanitizers, and etc., including thermometers. One thing that is also really important to note when it comes to disinfectants and sanitizers are that traditionally there has been the use of Clorox wipes as the main disinfectant sanitizer in a lot of the classroom spaces. And we are still going to be providing those, but we're going to be providing them at a very limited basis for a number of reasons. One is we're finding that they're very difficult to come by. More importantly, we also believe that using a chemical at a disinfectant level is not necessary in many circumstances within the classroom. We are going to be emphasizing cleaning and sanitizing much more than disinfecting. And so in addition to the Clorox wipes, we're going to be providing SaniQ, which is a disinfectant and a sanitizer based on the concentration in which it's concentrated with water. And we're also going to be providing sanitizing wipes, Purell sanitizing wipes, hand sanitizing wipes instead of a lot of Clorox bleach wipes, and encouraging folks to use either the sanitizing wipes or the SaniQ at the sanitizing level instead of using the disinfectants when appropriate. And that schedule, if we just go back to that back slide real quick, Michelle, that schedule is going to indicate when it's appropriate to disinfect and when it's appropriate to sanitize. And those will all be provided. We're planning on getting those kits organized. We are hoping that we can get a really good sense, especially with the special ed classes, of what folks are needing. The classroom supply lists for our special ed classes are much more comprehensive than just the kits for example, our Marin's Community School. I know that there's other things like dishwashing soap and other types of items. So we are asking that all teachers do a really good inventory and then submit that classroom supplies list so that we can make sure that we have all this, all the supplies organized and ready for you before you have students arrive. And then the last thing I would refer you to before we can open it up to questions is that we have a website that we are continuing to add to build on. It's the Rethinking Schools website. There's a lot of information, not only about cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting. There's a lot of information about offices and instructional ideas and basically all the different types of trainings that we're focused on to make sure that we are returning to site-based classroom instruction as safely as we can, and in conjunction with public health and our other public agencies. And with that, I think there might be one more slide here. Yeah, so some additional resources that are really important to share. There's been some really great information that has come out really recently, as recent as this weekend. If you go back to there, perfect. We have the CDC just put out a guidebook for safe reopening of California public schools, and so we're working to look through that. That was, I think, a lot of what the state superintendent was talking about today. The California Department of Health put out on Friday a document focused on schools and school-based programs. The CDC also last month, mid-month, put out considerations for schools. So that's a really good document as well. And so all of those document links are found on this presentation, which we will put up on our website. We can also provide that for you as well. In addition to the Return to School framework that Michelle was referring to, and our frequently asked questions. So those are the resources that we have available. Those are many of the resources that we are using as we are designing our best practices moving forward. And with that, I think we can open it up to questions. So I see one, and I'll go ahead and start reading these. I see one that just came up in the chat, and so it says, will MCOE provide bins for students in the classroom, and will the parents be notified they are not allowed in the classroom? Can I hand that one to you, Janelle?
Yeah, I can answer that one. So yes, our classroom teachers and staff have been working with program managers to put in orders or prior requests for purchasing items that they may feel are needed in the classroom, like the bins. So that is something that we are approving. So I would say work with your program manager if there's something that you feel would be beneficial in the classroom or needed to provide that separation of materials and spaces for students. The other part of that question, will parents be notified? So there is a what to expect letter that is going to the families. So they've already received a copy or the link to the protocol that says that information about no visitors on campus. And it will be in that what to expect letter, so that we're providing that to them one more time, what the expectations, what the health check-in will look like, and that they do need to keep their child home if they are exhibiting any symptoms.
Will students still be able to use cubbies?
Perhaps. So each classroom is different, and the setup is different, and how the cubbies are used is different. So it's possible. I don't think that in any situation it's going to be a yes or no there, but as we're doing the classroom walkthroughs, those are the kinds of things that we're discussing, is how it will be used. Is there a different way or a better way that we can do certain activities?
So questions can either come into the chat, or if you want to just unmute yourself, you're welcome to ask questions as well.
I have a question.
Great.
Could you briefly go over the cleaning schedule again? I wasn't understanding the layout of it.
Okay.
You have a cleaning schedule, what to use. Thank you.
Sure. And this is just a very small piece of the cleaning schedule. So on our website, we have a much more in-depth cleaning schedule. But if you look at the cleaning schedule here, for example, desktops after student use are clean and sanitized.
So that's not at the end of the day. We're going to be doing that throughout the day.
Correct. That is done in the classroom. Now, one of the things to note about this as well is that I've focused mainly on the cleaning and disinfecting that's happening in the classroom during the day. My assumption, and I think it's a very good assumption, is that the custodial staff at a school site has their cleaning and disinfecting protocols that they do every single day. And so this is much more focused on what is the expectation in the classroom during the day.
Right. And the cleaning and sanitizing, we would be using the Perel wipes that you sent?
So for sanitizing, for cleaning, I'm recommending soap and water.
Right.
And so using soap and water when cleaning a surface. And then either sanitizing with the Purell wipes or sanitizing with the SaniQ spray. And basically, when you watch the video, what we're doing with the sanitizing spray is we are taking a paper towel, we're taking the spray, and we're just spraying the paper towel, and then we're wiping down the surface with that paper towel, which is basically the same thing that's happening here. This is just towelettes that are soaked in a sanitizer.
Right.
What we're finding is that, and we're doing our best to find more of these, but they're pretty limited availability. And so an option which we believe is just as good is to just take that paper towel and to spray it with the sanitizer and then just wipe down the surface.
Okay. And let it sit for whatever it says.
Whatever the time is, yes. And I believe for our SaniQ, it's 1 minute.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So
It doesn't seem like...
There's another question.
Yep.
It doesn't seem like the kits are adequate to use for the duration of ESY. So one of the things that we did was an inventory for each of our classrooms, what's currently in the classroom, so that we have an idea of what's already there. We've also been keeping track within our pilot classrooms on what is the usage amount. And if a classroom is using more than what we've provided, that's why we have a request there, right? Ask for more. There is more. We want you to have the supplies that you need. So if you feel like you're going through it faster than what we've anticipated, let us know and we'll make sure you have added to your supply, okay? The next question, who will be able to ask questions? Do questions have to go through program managers, or may any concerned person ask the questions directly? So I think Michelle at the beginning framed a little bit about this, or maybe it was Melina. So anything that's related to programming are typical questions that may come up. Those are the kinds of questions that we'd want to still go through the program side. So in special ed, that's your program manager. So those kinds of questions. But if it's something related to specific around COVID, the cleaning, things from our training, we have the rapid response. Anybody from our staff, our community, anybody can email rapid response, and that comes to our team, and we'll be able to get an answer to you. And then as I'm doing the walkthroughs, I'm making sure that every classroom has my personal cell phone as part of the emergency contact information on their wall, on their bulletin board where they have the emergency protocols, so that if something comes up that's urgent, you have my direct phone number that you can contact me this summer. Most of all, we want people to get questions answered as quickly as possible. So you are welcome, anybody who has the question, to ask it.
I have one other question going back to the cleaning.
Yeah.
The request form. Do you know at this point in time how much of a heads up you need? Like, do you need a week's? Is it going to take us a week to get what we are requesting, or is it just going to be a matter of a day or two?
So the request form, I think the answer would be we would hope that we could provide that for you right away. So we need that. We're going to have all that stuff to you before kids arrive. One other thing to note is that this kit right here is the kit that's on this. This is for 1 week. So times everything times 4 of what you would actually be getting. The one thing that it's important to note is that the ESY programs are a little bit different in that they have a much more extensive list of items. And so what I'm recommending is that I would like the ESY teachers to put in their request on what they think they need for the duration of their the duration of their ESY courses. The kits are going to be used as a kind of a framework that we're going to be using when we're providing items for our other summer courses. And the reason why I'm going in that direction is that the ESY classes and the special ed classes already are using sanitizers and disinfectants and other items in their classrooms much more commonly than the AVID program that's going to be at San Rafael High School, for example. They're using those disinfectants and sanitizers already. So it looks like there's some more questions. Who is responsible for sanitizing playground equipment, both large like slides and individual items such as trikes? So my understanding is that the M&O team will be sanitizing playground equipment. That said, we are recommending that folks separate the use of that playground equipment throughout. So one cohort's kind of in one section, one cohort's in another section. If there's going to be times when different cohorts are using spaces. We're also recommending that if we're finding that there's an item that's being heavily used by one cohort, then it might make sense for the classroom teacher to clean or sanitize that item based on their discretion.
Yeah, to add to that, Patrick, as we've done walkthroughs where we've got more than one classroom on the campus, that's one of the things that we're talking about is what is the plan for the playground? How is it going to be used? What kind of schedule is happening? And I think we've all heard Mary Jane on our all staff calls saying we're all going to be wipers, we're all cleaners. That's something that we are all doing throughout the day. So as Patrick said, at the end of the day, our maintenance staff will be doing a disinfecting, but that doesn't mean that in between cohorts, after our use or before our use, that we may be having our staff do that wiping of the playground equipment, depending on if it's something that's going to be used by another cohort after us. So that's all part of the conversation that we're having around what does it look like when we have more than one cohort on the campus? When we get into fall and what that looks like, that'll be a deeper discussion with our on-site partners at school sites. But for the most part, our classrooms during the summer may be the only ones operating on the campus. And even if we're on an elementary campus with a play structure, we may choose not to use it because we don't know what's happening with public use. And it may be that we say, in our walkthrough, that we agree that we're not going to use the play structure because it would take so much time to clean it before we use it every day. So those are things that we're handling on a class-by-class basis through these walkthroughs. And if you have specific questions around your classroom, we can talk about those in follow-up as well. And then I would say in the next question around who cleans the bathroom during the day and after each student or staff uses it, that's that same concept, right? Is that we are cleaning that after our students are using it. We're cleaning it after we're using it ourselves, right? That's the expectation as adults. If we're going into the bathroom, we're going to be doing that cleaning before, after our use. and when we're supervising our students, that we are cleaning the surfaces that they've touched in the bathroom after they've used it.
Will you be providing guidelines for use of cleaning of EPE face shields, goggles, which are provided? So what I would say for that is, if at all possible, we're going to be providing three face shields and 3 protective glasses per kit. And so ideally, that's enough for each person to have their own. That said, it's a plastic item that can be cleaned and sanitized between use, if needed.
And Patrick had shared earlier that there is a video on guide that talks about the cleaning and the guidelines for using the EPE when cleaning. So that was the video that's available on our website for people to watch.
And then will we be supplied face shields from MCOE? The answer is yes. There'll be 3 per classroom. We do have more also, just so you know. If you do need more than that, just let us know. And this is what the face shield looks like here. And so this is just plastic. It can be wiped down with a sanitizing wipe after use, and if someone else needed to use it. Recreation equipment, I think we touched on that a little bit. You know, the big thing is that we're gonna do our best to try to encourage, we're gonna try to do our best that students are not sharing things, but we're also understand that that's gonna happen a little bit. So any cleaning that can happen or sanitizing that can happen in between use by one student and another is encouraged, but at the cohort level, we understand that that's not going to happen all the time. Who contacts a new summer school teacher about all these protocols? And can we set up a meeting with the new teacher from Grisella?
From Gisela.
Grisella, sorry.
Gisela, I can answer that. So anybody who's working in one of our classrooms is expected to participate in the training today or on Friday. So they are hearing the same information as you. They are expected to be reviewing all of the protocols, and our program managers have been having those direct conversations with them. We're also looking at, when possible, that they participate in the walkthrough at the classroom when the team is there. And we are also, our program managers may be working with the individual classroom teams to set up time for discussion around those specific strategies in that classroom.
Good, thank you.
Are you recommending we wear the face shields as well as the face coverings during the day? Janelle, you want me to speak to that?
Yeah, if you want to, Patrick.
Okay. So we are not recommending that you wear a face shield as well as a face covering during the day. We are recommending that if you do have a student that is symptomatic and you need to support that student while they are being isolated and guardians are on the way, we would recommend a face shield in that situation. We are also starting to get word from the state that for those students and times when students need to be able to see the face of their teacher, if you're teaching language or some other circumstance, that a face shield could work in replace of a face covering.
So Patrick, what I would add to that one is that's what the new information is coming out at the state level. We are going to ask locally of our public health if that's something that we can move forward with here locally.
Yes, thank you. Other questions?
Okay, I'm sure you guys will have questions as they come up and follow up. So you are welcome to ask. You know, you have the contact information, the rapid response. You also have all of our program managers and my contact information. So you are welcome to send questions and follow up. Looks like we have one more question that I do want to go ahead and answer. What happens if parents cannot be reached in case of student pickup? So as we are working with our families coming back into on-site instruction, one of the steps that we're doing is an individual call to the families. Our secretarial team has been calling, confirming the contact information is all current in their emergency form, and emphasizing that they, if a child does become symptomatic, that it is the expectation that they are picked up. And so we will be supervising the child until they are picked up, but we are confirming in the parents' contact as well as an emergency contact who would be able to pick up the child. So that's one of those things that I think comes up as a concern for all of our classrooms as we're doing walkthroughs. So what I want you to know is that something that we are definitely emphasizing with our parents in those individual calls to them.
Janelle, I have one more suggestion if possible, and that is in your letter to the parents about what to expect. Maybe you could suggest to them that they start washing their kids' hands constantly throughout the day now. Just so it's one less thing for the child to, you know what I mean?
So for students who that may be a sensitivity of washing
Well,
hands.
not only that, but just to get them into the routine that this,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. Thank you, Linda.
Go wash your hands.
All right, so I don't see any other questions coming in, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap up for today. I really appreciate your time today and participating, and any thoughts, questions, go ahead and make sure that you do send them our way, okay? And so we'll go ahead and end the training at this time. Thank you.